did spy on the Trump campaign. In just a few minutes, Donald Trump Jr. joins us here on that and more. Plus, big news today, news that may shape American history going forward. The state of California, our biggest state, has ordered its citizens to hinder federal law enforcement, to disobey federal law. The Attorney General of California says he will prosecute American citizens who refuse to do that and who help the government maintain our borders. We'll talk to someone who supports that in just a minute. But first, we're hours away now from a government shutdown. Chief National Correspondent Ed Henry has been watching every development tonight and has the latest for us. Ed?
Tucker, great to see you. The latest, of course, as you remember last night, the House passed a bill that would keep the government open to about February 16th. The Senate is now having a vote tonight in just about 2 hours. But our latest vote counting suggests that that's going to fail. That would mean the first government shutdown since 2013. Coming off that historic tax cut victory, the last thing President Trump wants is to mark his first year in office this weekend with a government shutdown. But there's a feeling among some of the president's top advisors here at the White House tonight that maybe Chuck Schumer, the Senate Democratic leader, overplayed his hand by making this all about DACA and falling into a narrative that in order to save about 800,000 young people who were brought to this country illegally, he's willing to shut the government down. And in fact, that's why the president and his aides today tried to brand this as what they called the Schumer shutdown, something that's taking hold a bit on social media tonight. And particularly, the president tried to show he's taking charge by summoning Schumer over to the Oval Office this afternoon for a 90-minute talk. The senator left that meeting saying they've made some progress, but that was many hours ago, and we haven't seen that progress. And from the White House side of it tonight, our reporting suggests from my colleague John Roberts that, in fact, Schumer came to this meeting with a whole list of other demands that he wanted added to this bill that the White House and Republican leaders are simply not going to do. So the bottom line tonight is, barring some last-minute deal, this vote is expected to go down at 10 o'clock and lead to a government shutdown, and then that will lead to a scramble to try and come back to the table and stop that shutdown over the next few days. The White House, though, looking at this poll that came out late today from CNN, suggesting that when people were asked what they preferred, avoiding a shutdown got 56%, renewing and codifying DACA got 34%. That's part of the reason why here inside the White House they think tonight that Democrats may have overplayed their hand. Tucker.
You think? Ed Henry at the White House for us. Thanks a lot.
Good to see you.
Well, there's so much news going on right now, it's hard to keep up, but we think something really significant has just happened in the state of California. The Attorney General there, Javier Becerra, just sent a warning to employers in his state. He said this yesterday. He said, defy the federal government or you will face punishment. Federal immigration authorities reportedly around in California, which has more illegal aliens than any other state. In response to that, Becerra held a press conference in which he threatened Californians with prosecution and heavy fines if they dare to collaborate with their government in any way to help enforce this country's borders. We want to repeat that and let it sink in for a second. The country's biggest state is punishing its citizens for following federal law. Well, that's not just craven politics. It's a threat to the basic integrity of the United States. How basic? Well, there's a famous Supreme Court decision called McCullough versus Maryland. In that case, the court held that because the federal government is supreme to the states, it is unconstitutional for the states to sabotage valid actions of the federal government. That case was decided in 1819. It's been settled law for almost 200 years. A lot of the things we take for granted rest on that case. It's easily one of the most important Supreme Court decisions in our history. If you ignore it, the U.S. immediately falls apart. That's not an overstatement. Think about it. If you followed Becerra's lead, and any state could simply nullify any federal law it didn't like, what would happen? And that means not just immigration laws, by the way. That means tax laws. That means interstate commerce, foreign trade, abortion, narcotics, human trafficking, guns, you name it. Think of a law. What would happen? Well, the country would immediately descend into ungovernable chaos. Keep in mind, and this would be relevant, every state also maintains its own heavily armed National Guard. Disaster. And it's not a theoretical disaster, by the way. It actually happened to us once. Liberals used to worry about things like this. You remember the media hyperventilating pretty recently because Nevada rancher Cliven Bundy tried to defy federal land use law out west. You saw them cheer as an obscure county clerk in Kentucky called Kim Davis went to jail for refusing to grant gay marriage licenses a couple of years ago. Those cases were nothing compared to this in scale or significance. The chief law enforcement officer of the country's largest state has essentially declared independence from the rest of America, and he's ordered his citizens to secede with him. We fought a civil war over this very question 150 years ago. Democrats lost, by the way. Keep in mind that California is challenging the integrity of the Union not in order to help its citizens, but on behalf of a foreign population that has no right to be here in the first place. We've had a lot of people on this program lately to talk about DACA and illegal immigration. And we've asked every one of them the same question, which is the only question that actually matters. How does any of this help American citizens? Every night we ask that question. So far, we've not yet received a single coherent answer, not one. Do you think that you have an obligation to represent American citizens first above people who are here illegally?
I represent my citizens very well, thank you, Tucker. Everyone that comes through that door.
Okay, so you weren't willing to answer that question.
Loves the service.
So let's try a second one. How about in each specific case we say, if you're an immigrant here, really simple, prove that you're producing more than you consume. Would you be for applying that standard?
I'm for the American people. I'm for Republicans, Democrats coming together and come up with a solution. Oh, you're not for that standard.
Every parent in America worries about the cost. Now taxpayers in New Jersey will be subsidizing the cost for illegal aliens. Why does that help them? Why does that help citizens of New Jersey?
Didn't you say, as you said, you should throw them all out? I mean, could you really be suggesting that we're going to take 500,000 people in our state and deport them? Could you be suggesting that we take 11 million
because you don't have an answer. They don't have an answer because they don't care what the answer is, because helping Americans is not the point. Illegal immigration makes them feel like good people. It makes their donors much richer. And of course, and this is the core point, it ensures their reelection forever and ever. Now it's destroying the country we grew up in, but whatever. All they see is upside. Rebecca Kaplan is an Oakland City Councilwoman. She joins us tonight. Rebecca, thanks for coming on. So here you have the Attorney General of the state of California threatening to prosecute citizens for obeying federal law. Doesn't that sound like something that happens in Mexico, not the United States?
Well, I think your point about the importance of protecting our citizens and our community is really well taken. And the reason I introduced the resolution that the Oakland City Council passed to have our police not work on immigration raids is because we have problems of real crime in our community, and diverting our scarce police resources away from fighting violence, away from fighting serious crime in order to participate in immigration raids undermines the safety of the community.
But that is, I think we're talking past each other, though, with respect. So what the new news here is that your Attorney General, Javier Becerra, has said he will prosecute Californians, employers, who follow federal law. And I'm asking, whatever you think about immigration, illegal or otherwise, that's the beginning of chaos. Can you see that?
Well, depending on how it's used, it could be. However, we've heard some serious cases of employers hiring undocumented immigrants and then refusing to pay them and then threatening to call ICE if they complain about not getting paid.
But that's not what the Attorney General...
ICE as a tool to break their law.
Well, that's one of the reasons, and I think that's a real concern, actually. We agree on that. That's one of the reasons I'm against illegal immigration, is because it exploits workers of all kinds. And that's kind of the point, and I'm sure that's why your donors are for it, because they benefit. But that's not what the Attorney General of your state said. He said, if you follow immigration law, federal immigration law, we will prosecute you. And I don't think you have to be crazy to imagine how other states might decide, well, okay, we're going to prosecute our citizens for following federal tax law or abortion law or interstate commerce statutes. Do you see why this could result pretty quickly in, like, I don't know, a civil war?
Well, I certainly respect your concern that that could be abused. What I'm saying is we haven't seen yet any cases brought. There could be cases where it is justified. What we passed in Oakland is not an obligation on private citizens or private companies. It's a direction to our own taxpayer-funded law enforcement.
Right, I get it.
We want them focused on protecting the safety of the public and not immigration.
A million times. And we can have it now, but this just seems much bigger to me, and it is your state, and he's a fellow Democrat, and he's someone with his eyes on the White House. He's nationally prominent. He's certainly well known. And it just seems like he stepped over a line where he's not really behaving as attorney generals typically do. He's declaring independence from the rest of the country. Doesn't that worry you?
Well, certainly I worry when law enforcement steps over the line, and that's why we in Oakland were so concerned when ICE agents came in, tore apart a family in West Oakland, sent a young man for deportation who was not accused of any crime, and caused great harm to our community.
Okay, but you may not like
victims and witnesses of crime are afraid to come forward. It hurts everyone.
I agree to this extent. There are lots of federal laws that I don't like. I don't like to see them enforced because I don't like them. However, I don't challenge the legitimacy of the law, of federal law enforcement, of the Congress of the United States, because that would result in civil war and anarchy. And that's exactly what your Attorney General just did. And so I'm giving you an opportunity right now to say to him, don't do this. Don't secede from the rest of the United States, from the country, and do this. It's a crazy thing to do. Do you not agree?
Well, I think there's very much concern in our community about the overreach of ICE and their explicit targeting of sanctuary cities.
I'm being respectful. I think you're a smart person. And I think this is bigger than whether a family in Oakland was hassled by ICE. This has to do with the staying together of the 50 United States. Do you think it's okay if tomorrow the Attorney General of Idaho said, we're not respecting federal gun law, and we're going to allow people to buy fully automatic weapons? How about hand grenades? And maybe some of them will get into the state of California. How would you feel about that?
Oh, I'm very concerned about the flood of illegal guns into California.
Oh, come on. Don't be a robot.
It's
Give me a real answer. Come on.
Absolutely.
You're being like a liberal robot where it's like whatever I say, you're giving me the bumper sticker. But be a human being with me. This seems like a line that he's crossed. I worry about law enforcement
overreach. Absolutely, I worry about law enforcement overreach.
How about Javier Becerra, your chief law enforcement official in the biggest state in the union, saying, I'm going to prosecute you for following American law? You don't think that's huge?
Well, I think that there could be a case that would be problematic, but I'm saying I haven't seen him do that. What I have
seen
done
happened yesterday.
is the head of ICE targeting people based on his prejudice. Hey, I have a question for you, Tucker. You believe in the Bible, right? You've talked about being a Christian.
Don't give me the Bible thing. I'm not here to talk about my religious beliefs. I'm here to talk about the integrity of the Republic. I don't think I'm overstating it. I'm not given to hysteria, but this seems like a really big thing, and you're ignoring it, and I don't think you should. I think that's a big mistake. We're out of time, Rebecca, but I appreciate your coming on, even if you refuse to answer a single question. Thank you. The topic of chain migration, central to negotiations over a DACA deal, central to all negotiations over immigration, because a huge percentage of our immigrants come here because they have relatives here already. Jessica Vaughn has taken a very close look at those numbers. She's at the Center for Immigration Studies. She joins us tonight. Jessica, give us a sense of how key chain migration, it's a phrase the left is saying we're not allowed to use anymore, but it's the phrase. How central is that to our immigration patterns?
Well, it makes up more than half of all legal immigration today.
So most.
Right, it is. It's most of immigration, and it's the fastest growing part of immigration because certain categories of chain migration are not limited, like some of the family preferences. For example, the parents of U.S. citizens come in unlimited numbers with no waiting period. So there are more and more of them coming every year. And we've actually been able to trace the pattern of immigration from certain countries where it started off with, say, the lottery as being one of the main forms of immigration. And then over time, chain migration starts to dwarf any other kind of immigration. It's got a built-in momentum, and that's driving growth in our immigration system, and it's ensuring that the immigration flow that we get is basically the same kind of people who came before. We're letting yesterday's immigrants choose tomorrow's immigrants when it's based on chain migration. And that's not a logical way to run an immigration system.
It sounds like we're not in control of it. Well, that's it. I mean, it doesn't sound by your description that the U.S. government, its citizens, are really in charge of who comes here because of chain migration.
That's right. Immigrants are in charge of who comes through chain migration. And that's how we've seen, particularly when you have the lottery driving a lot of new chain migration. We have countries from all over the world that previously didn't send many immigrants. And eventually, chain migration exponentially increases the numbers, and it develops a life of its own in a way, and momentum of its own. And that's why this is one of the key things that needs to be addressed if there's going to be an immigration bill. Because if we do a DACA amnesty, the people who get that amnesty, whether it's the 700,000 people who now have DACA or the 3 million some who are part of certain other plans that have been proposed, like by Senator Durbin, their parents will qualify under our current system. And that's, you know, at least going to probably double the size of the amnesty.
That's unbelievable.
And that's why chain migration is one of the 4 things that President Trump says has to be a part of a deal to offset the effects of any amnesty.
So it's, I mean, I guess the takeaway just for our viewers is chain migration is responsible for the majority of people who come here legally. So it's not some afterthought. It's the debate right there. Thank you for making that clear to us, Jessica. Appreciate it.
Good to talk with you.
There's a memo making the rounds of Congress. It's all anybody in Washington has talked about all afternoon. Some members who have read it say they are shocked. They seem to mean that. They say it's a smoking gun. It's proof the Obama administration, in fact, actually did spy on the campaign before the 2016 election. This was all denounced as an absurd lie, a delusion, but maybe it wasn't actually. A 4-page memo currently circulating through the Congress reportedly details pre-election abuses of FISA. That's the law that allows the executive branch to engage in the surveillance of American citizens and was just reauthorized mindlessly by the Congress. That very little fanfare. Several Republicans are demanding the memo be released. They're being joined in that by the ACLU, believe it or not. Congressman Matt Gaetz represents Florida. He has seen the memo. He joins us tonight. Congressman, thanks for coming on. So,
good to be on, Tucker.
Apparently, you are bound by law not to divulge details of the memo, but give us a sense of your reaction to it, and to the extent you can, tell us why it's a big deal.
Well, sure, I can tell you that within the last 2 hours, 63 of my Republican colleagues joined me in sending a letter to Intelligence Chairman Devin Nunes to immediately hold a vote of the Intelligence Committee to release this memo. I believe that once the American people have the opportunity to evaluate the allegations and claims in this memo, it will become evident the activities of the last administration, the crimes that I believe were committed, and the total sham that this Mueller investigation is, built on a false premise and rotten to the core, Tucker.
So the President of the United States tweeted some months ago, and as we said, was widely derided for it, that he believed he was surveilled, his staff was surveilled during the campaign. Will this memo bolster that point?
Well, Tucker, to respond to that question could potentially confirm or deny the specifics within that memo, and I'm duty-bound not to do that. I can't even talk on television tonight about things that we've discussed in the past, but what I can say is that this memo names names. It actually connects the players, the entities that folks are very familiar with, names we've heard in the news and organizations we're well aware of. It's also noteworthy that every single Democrat on the Intelligence Committee voted against even allowing me to be able to see the memo, or other members of Congress. And though the Republicans overrode that vote with a majority, even today, Democrats are protesting by refusing to even go to the Intelligence Committee room and avail themselves to the information that is in this memo. So I want to blow past the bureaucracy and the red tape. I think the best disinfectant to the corruption that is highlighted in this memo will be the sunshine of transparency. And I have every confidence that Speaker Ryan, as an institutionalist, will support our efforts.
Very quickly, if we could just savor the irony, you believe that information in this memo points up illegal activity by officials in the U.S. government, but it is somehow illegal for you to say what it is?
Well, until we're able to alter the current classification, right now this is a top secret document, and so yes, that is ironic, but I think heads are going to roll, people are going to be fired, and there may be some that go to jail.
Yeah, some of us are beginning to expect that top secret sometimes is designed for self-preservation. Maybe that's obvious. Congressman, thank you for fighting the good fight, and I hope you get this out there in the public where it deserves to be.
Thank you, Tucker.
If the Obama administration did in fact spy on President Trump's campaign, one of the main targets may have been Donald Trump Jr., and he joins us tonight. Don Trump Jr., thanks for coming on. What do you make of this?
Good to be with you, Tucker. How are you?
I'm great, but confused. So you have members of Congress saying that this document, which I have not seen, I don't think you have either, changes the conversation completely, but they can't tell us what's in it. To the extent you have heard what's in it, what do you make of it?
You know, it sounds pretty troubling to me. Obviously, this has been a witch hunt, probably the greatest since the Salem witch trials. The interesting thing about it is the only collusion, the only shadiness, the only thing that's been discovered is what the prior administration, the DNC, and all of them have done. The irony of all of this is if Republicans conducted themselves the way I've seen the Democrats conduct themselves, we'd be reading about this on every page of every newspaper and every TV channel in the world right now. We're a little bit more honorable than them, but it really sounds disturbing. And, you know, I don't know what to do with it because I don't know what's in it. But if all of these guys are saying people's heads are going to roll, people are going to get fired, and people may actually go to jail, I think the American people deserve to know. They've been led down a road to believe X. They've been sold a bill of goods about us, about our campaign from 18 months. The media totally complicit in helping the Dems do this. And the only thing we've discovered, it was actually them. I think we need more information.
So I think that the president has the unilateral authority to declassify documents. Do you think that would be a good idea in this case?
I think it'd be a phenomenal idea. You know, I'm not aware of what that is. I don't communicate with him about these sort of things.
Right.
You know, but they've certainly gone after him. They've certainly gone after me, our whole family. I took a 20-minute meeting, okay, that everyone acknowledges would be standard practice in the campaign. I did 23 hours of testimony. To put things into perspective, Hillary Clinton, as Secretary of State, did 11 on Benghazi, where people died, where she lied and said it was about a video, where we lost an ambassador. How are those things the same? But it's the double standard that the American people are being fed, again, by the Democrats, in total complicity with the media. That's why neither have any trust from the American people anymore. I think we should all be transparent. We've been transparent throughout this whole process. It's disgusting.
Well, certainly, I think we'd all benefit from seeing what's in this memo, for sure. Do you believe that your campaign was spied on by agencies overseen by the Obama White House during the campaign?
Listen, what I've seen and what I've learned over the last few months is bordering on disgusting. So there'd be little doubt in my mind that it'd be possible. But this isn't the America that I thought would happen. I mean, this is the stuff that you read about from banana republics. But it seems like it's happening. I'd like to know. I'm not privy to that information. But it seems like all of these congressmen, none of the Democrats even want to read it. They don't even want to go see it. You know, if it was the other way around, wouldn't there be a lot more outrage from the media? Wouldn't I read about it maybe once on CNN? I think I would. And the fact that it's not being covered, they would rather cover that Donald Trump had an extra scoop of ice cream. They would rather question a rear admiral and a doctor appointed by the Obama administration saying, hey, the guy's in phenomenal shape, whether you like it or not. They would rather question that as TV quack doctors than actually talk about these real issues that really affect real Americans.
Why do you think that Democrats in the Congress who've said for over a year that their only aim is to get to the truth and to understand the nexus between Russia and the Trump campaign and the U.S. government, why would they not want to see this memo?
Because they have no actual interest in the truth, Tucker. What I've realized, they have interest in their sound bites, and the media will sell it. They both went so all in with this contrived Russia thing, based on the documents, based on the things that were probably obtained pretty illegally. They went all in that they needed it to be true. It wasn't if it was true or what happened. They needed it to be true because their entire narrative for 18 months, their entire credibility, everything that they've sold to the American people on every TV channel for almost 2 years has been based on the fact that this is gospel, that this is true, and now it turns out to all be nonsense, and it was actually them and the prior administration doing some pretty shady stuff. I mean, that is earth-shattering. That is disgusting. And the American people should be really upset about it. Because this wasn't like, hey, maybe we should get to the bottom of it. This is what happened. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And you better believe it because we're going to stick it and ram it down your throat for 2 years.
I just heard from a member of Congress who's not a hothead at all, who's kind of a moderate guy, who said he saw this and it's shocking. And so maybe the White House will take your advice and declassify it. And we can all find out what's in it. I think that might be a great education. Don Trump Jr., thanks a lot for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Tucker. Good to be with you.
Thanks a million. Government shutdown seems to be just hours away from right now. unless and until Congress can work out a last-minute agreement. Those negotiations are going on as we speak, and we've got updates on them. We'll get them to you next. Ought to happen.
What's going to happen, I believe, or likely to happen, is that we're going to have a short-term CR, whether it's the 4-week or maybe a 3-week CR.
Continuing resolution to fund the government.
Continuing resolution to fund the government. The Democrats right now are pretty desperate because they thought they had the upper hand when they went to these negotiations. They thought that they were going to win, but I think they started realizing that the American people are turning against them. If they shut down the government because of illegal immigration, I don't think anyone's going to stand with them except for their base.
Right.
And I think they're starting to believe that. And you can see a little bit of desperation with Chuck Schumer going to the White House, with kind of some of the things that they're doing. I believe right now, maybe even at this time, they're having a conference with all the Senate Democrats. They're talking to each other. So I think something's going to happen. What should happen is that we should just have a full government funding for the rest of the year. We need to stop playing these games.
Right.
You know, we've done 4 CRs in the House of Representatives, continuing resolutions. We actually passed a funding bill about 6 months ago. The House of Representatives has done their job. We decided that we wanted to fully fund the government. We did everything that we needed to do, and the Senate continues to piddle around and do nothing. And it's frustrating, not just the Democrats, but the Republicans in the Senate. They need to change their rules. They need to figure out how it is that we're going to be able to get 51 people to vote for a funding bill. We shouldn't be subjected to the Democrats' demands on every one of these funding bills every single time. We have all 3 branches of government. We have the 2 houses and the White House. We should be able to just
but you don't have to tie DACA to funding the government. The Constitution doesn't specify you have to legalize people here illegally before you fund the government.
No, it's the Democrats who want to do that.
Right.
And they want to shut down the government because they want to put the priorities of illegal immigrants ahead of the American people. And I think we need to make that clear to the American people. In fact, I have told the president and I have told my leadership that DACA is not something that has to happen. We have a deadline of March 15th or whatever that deadline is, but there's really no deadline. DACA does not have to happen. Funding the government has to happen.
Right. Well, that's the order of the priorities. I think most people would agree on both sides. Somehow we've lost that. Congressman, thank you for that very clearest explanation I've heard, and I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks. Well, the left is treating the approaching shutdown more seriously than a ballistic missile headed for Hawaii. If you haven't seen their reactions, get a beer. We've got them for you.
With ADT, you can feel safe for only $49. That includes...
Senator Dianne Feinstein of San Francisco has warned that without the government, quote, people die. Joe Concha writes about the media for The Hill. He believes these fears may be slightly overblown. He joins us tonight. So, Joe, the 2 things we know about government shutdowns are it's a disaster, sort of the end, it's the fall of Rome, and they're invariably the Republicans' fault. Have we learned anything new?
Well, remember, Rome has now fallen, if we're looking back on recent history. 18 times since 1976, the government has shut down under Democratic and Republican administrations. Look, we're now in a time where it used to be the boy who cried wolf. Now it's the boys and girls who were born before 1945 who cried wolf. And I'll give you one example. Bernie Sanders, right before Republicans were trying to repeal and replace Obamacare last summer, this is what he said, and I'm quoting, "As Republicans try to repeal the Affordable Care Act, they should be reminded every day that 36,000 people will die yearly as a result." Even the Washington Post fact checker gave that 4 Pinocchios. But no matter, media still ran with that, saying that people will die. You played the Feinstein clip as well. Then we have Nancy Pelosi, obviously the minority speaker of the House. This is what she said, and I'm quoting. This is about tax reform. Okay, tax reform, giving people money back. Tax cuts, reforming the tax code. Quote, "If this goes through, kiss life on earth goodbye. The debate on health care is like death. This is Armageddon. You expected her to go the full Peter Venkman from Goodfellas. Human sacrifice, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria. If she added that, I think it would have had more impact."
You know how you know the media are just completely partisan? Because if you wanted a good story, you just follow Pelosi around with a camera all day. And it would be like the greatest cinema verite. It would be the most devastating documentary ever made if you just filmed it. But no one ever does.
Why not, right? I mean, if she retires, that's gold right there. And I think we should get a split on the whole thing. No question. So, yeah, hyperbole is the name of the game now, Tucker, no question. The thing is, though, when you cry wolf enough, the old story, people stop listening.
Can I just ask you a question, because I can't control myself, and but so there are media reports tonight, you cover the media, that Jeff Zucker over at CNN is in talks to run ESPN, the declining sports property on cable owned by ABC. Do you think those reports are true?
It could be true. You know, Jeff actually got his start in sports at NBC Sports before he went to Today Show. Now, we're talking when he's like 24 years old.
Right.
ESPN's owned by Disney. That is a direct competitor with Turner, which obviously has Turner Sports and TNT. So would he go to ESPN and take on a sinking ship? If I'm Jeff Zucker, I don't take that job, I think, right now. They are hemorrhaging ratings, hemorrhaging viewers. Layoffs have been in the hundreds in the past couple of months. That would not be a good decision for the CNN president.
Huh. Okay. Thank you for that perspective. Joe, it's great to see you. Have an excellent weekend.
I will. You too.
Mexico is coming apart at the seams thanks to drug cartels. That's not an overstatement, by the way. Check out the numbers. Maybe a wall on the border would help insulate us from that. Univision's Jorge Ramos is here. He doesn't agree. Stay tuned. People were murdered in Mexico just last year as drug cartels continue to fight each other and the Mexican government. Meanwhile, drugs continue to pour across the American border in massive amounts, killing tens of thousands of Americans. Now, fear of letting this chaos into our country is one of the reasons the Trump administration has called for tougher immigration laws and a border wall. Not everybody is on board, to put it mildly. We recently discussed this issue with Jorge Ramos. He's a Univision anchor and champion of the oppressed south of the border. Here it is. When last we spoke, you said that the United States has 11 million illegal immigrants within its borders because of supply and demand, and it's America's fault that these people are here. They were lured by jobs. But there's a flip side to it, which is that the remittances paid by Mexican citizens back to Mexico are the largest source of cash in Mexico, higher than its oil export revenue.
That is true.
So Mexico desperately needs American money sent back by illegal aliens here. Why shouldn't we blame the government of Mexico for that?
Well, first of all, I don't call them illegal aliens. No human being is illegal. Let me just start
Except the people who are here illegally, they're illegal.
Well, they're here, but we don't call illegal companies those who hire them. So I don't use the term illegal. You can use it if you want to.
It's actually the legal term in U.S. government documents, so I'm just going to go ahead and go with the accurate description. But okay, let's get to the point of it.
And I'll go with the moral point of view that you should not call anyone illegal.
Except those who are illegal, and I'm going to go ahead and not be bullied and just call them what they are. But the point is, look, the government of Mexico couldn't exist without them. That's the point.
Well, they do get billions of dollars from Mexican citizens in the United States. That is true. But the point is that undocumented immigrants are here, Tucker, because of us. We need them. You might want to admit it or not, but we need them. It's simply a matter of supply and demand. And whenever you go to get a service or to a hotel or to a restaurant, we are being served by them.
I know you're big on lecturing Americans on their moral failings, but what about the moral failings of the Mexican government, which is corrupt, parts of it are controlled by the drug cartels, it doesn't serve the needs of its own people, and it hasn't for almost 100 years, and yet it's 100% America's fault and not the fault of the Mexican government, which uses illegal immigration as a pressure relief valve? That's what's happening, and you know it.
Yeah, I think you chose the wrong guest to defend the Mexican government, because I've been criticizing the Mexican government for decades. The Mexican government, it is really corrupt. In the last year, I was checking the numbers. More than 20,000 people have been killed because of violence in Mexico. And we're going to have elections in Mexico on July the 1st, and I hope that changes. But I'm no one to defend the Mexican government. There's a lack of democracy. There's a lack of transparency. There's a lot of corruption. There's really nothing to defend about the President Peña Nieto.
But in effect you are, because you're saying that our illegal immigration problems are our fault, when in fact abetting illegal immigration is the policy of the Mexican government. The single largest source of heroin in the United States is Mexico. The leading cause of death for people under 50 is heroin OD. So why shouldn't we be angry at the government of Mexico for allowing this to happen here?
Well, because there's a different way of seeing that. You are seeing it as Mexico is responsible for the drugs coming to this country, and the way people in Mexico and the way people in Colombia and in other Latin American countries, the way they see it is that as long as you have 20 to 25 million Americans who use continuously illegal drugs, there's again a problem of supply and demand. And it doesn't matter what you do at the border. It doesn't matter if you have a huge wall. Drugs are going to keep on coming. So
that's what the drug dealer tells himself to sleep at night. He says it's not my fault, it's the junkie's fault. Right. So if you flood a community with illegal drugs, do you think drug use and ODs go up? I mean, that's a rhetorical question because the answer is, of course, yes. So why blame the victim here? I don't understand.
Well,
no, it's not the way to see it. It's the empirical truth.
Tucker, if you have 20 or 25 million Americans who've used an illegal drug in the last month, what are you going to do? I mean, unless you change
really, Jorge,
the consumption, nothing's going to change.
Because if I dropped a ton of heroin into your zip code, do you think you would see a higher rate of heroin addiction? And do you think that would be the fault of your children and your neighbors? No, it would be my fault.
It is not only that you drop it. The fact is that people are asking for that. Illegal drug users in the United States
15-year-olds are desperate for cheap heroin. Yeah. No, I mean, look, let's be honest. Not building a wall is not making the problem better. People are dying as a result of it. No, the wall won't help.
The wall would be completely useless.
How do you know that? So let's take a look at walls through history. How many have been completely useless? Let's see, none.
Let me give you just a few arguments here.
Okay.
According to Pew Research Center, almost 45% of all undocumented immigrants come by plane or with a visa. So it doesn't matter how long or wide
almost
your wall
how many?
Would be.
What percent?
Almost 45%. You can check it.
So what about no? I think that number's right. I think that number's right. But there's still 500,000 people, more than, apprehended at the border every year on foot. That doesn't account for all the people who made it across. You have hundreds of thousands of people coming, some unknown number, coming across with no wall, and you have tons and tons of drugs. So why is it immoral to try and stop that?
Because the idea that you are giving your audience and the idea that President Trump is giving the American people is that we are being invaded by Mexico. That is not true. More Mexicans actually are leaving the United States than coming to this country.
I'm not saying we're being invaded. I'm saying tons of drugs and hundreds of thousands of people are. I'm not saying there is.
No,
I'm saying
there's no invasion.
Tons of heroin and hundreds of thousands of people are coming across, and many of them would be stopped by the wall. So why is it immoral to put a lock on our front door? I don't understand. Why should we be scolded for wanting to protect our own country? I don't get that.
I agree with you. Every single country has the right to secure borders. I have no problem. With that.
But you're arguing against the wall.
That the wall that President Trump wants to build and that apparently you're supporting would be completely useless. First of all, there's no invasion coming from Mexico. Second, it's not true that hundreds of thousands of people are coming to this country because the undocumented population has remained stable. The undocumented population has remained stable in this country for the last decade, and third, Mexico, of course, won't pay for that.
First of all, we don't really know what the undocumented so-called population is because they're here illegally.
No.
As a factual matter, we don't.
It's true. We do. The Census Bureau,
look,
the government.
The point is, you've got 11 million at least. Could be 20. We don't know. But there are more than 10 million people here illegally.
They're here illegally. 11 million.
We'll say 11 million. Those people are living proof that we don't have control of our border, and I hope that you'll just sum it up for me in one sentence because we're running out of time. Why is it a bad idea to build a wall to stop some percentage of those people, some percentage of the heroin, when every other wall in every other country on planet Earth has had an effect in stopping people and drugs from getting into the country it separates? I don't understand.
Because it's a myth to believe that the border right now is more insecure. It's a myth. And then, as long as you have millions of consumers of illegal drugs in this country, drugs are going to keep on coming from ports of entry or through tunnels. That's on one hand.
Let's just build the wall and we'll see. We can come back and kind of assess its effectiveness
if you come by plane, trucker.
Okay, that's great. Jorge, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
New information today from investigators on the Las Vegas shooter, Stephen Paddock.